Okie dokie. Are we ready?
Always ready.
Always ready. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages.
Welcome to
Wholehearted Living with
Valerie
and Benny.
Woohoo!
So we also have a sound person. Our sound person is Iggy. Hello, Iggy.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
I almost forgot to take the mute off of my mic.
Oh,
Yeah, well, that doesn't
and then
work.
they really couldn't hear
Yeah. We this is the podcast where one of us has a subject and the other one
you. Doesn't know what it is.
doesn't know what the subject is.
And this year, or this
this year,
this podcast, Benny's going to present the subject, and I don't know.
That's right.
So I'm sitting here waiting anxiously, but we're going to babble a second.
Anxiously.
Nervously, kind of. Sometimes I get a little nervous. Like, what are you going to bring up? Like when we were doing the Brene Brown thing, I knew what every week was going to be like. But now I'm like, what is he going to throw at me?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk football night in America.
Woo.
No, we're not.
Or hockey.
But I thought we would start with just talking about the fact that if you don't know this, well, you wouldn't know this. Why in the world did I told them that they wouldn't know this? They would. Well, obviously, they're not going to know this.
I don't know. It depends on what you're going to say.
Yes. Today is draft day, or actually yesterday was the first draft. And so...
Well, if they're listening to this, when it actually goes live, it's going to probably be a week or two.
Right. Well, that's
past.
why I'm saying.
Oh.
So you wouldn't know that this is when we're recording this.
Oh, I
But
got what you're saying.
Yesterday, yesterday was the first day of the draft. Today is the second day of the draft. And I've been a Kansas City Chiefs fan since 1986, really. 1986.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so longer, way before Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and the dynasty that's taking place right now. Woo! And so I was... Oh, shut up.
Just kidding.
So, I was a Patrick Mahomes fan I was a Chiefs fan for a very long time. And then Patty, which is really, really fun, because like you talked about hockey with Peter, why did you get into hockey?
I didn't get into hockey. I got on the Red Wings because I still don't like hockey per se. But Peter's a Red Wing fan, so I just said, well, if you can't beat him, join him. And I started watching it and became a Red Wing fan.
Okay.
So,
yeah. But it makes it more fun, I'm sure, for Peter.
For sure. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And that for sure is the case for me because my daughters could give her a rip. They didn't care about sports at all. And then at the time, I'm talking about back in the day, they didn't have boyfriends or anything. They were kids. Or they didn't exist, excuse me. And then once they were born and once I was doing it and once I was watching it, it was like every time football was on, it was like, I got to go do something else. So I'm going to go wash my hair. And so...
So wait, you were a Kansas Chief fan before you knew Patty, who's from Kansas City, Missouri?
Yes.
What the what?
What the what?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's the beep. What the... There it is. Okay. So... so this is a fascinating story.
Well, it really is because I did not know that.
It's really not that fascinating. Back in those days, we had two football teams, neither of which was really considered an LA team. So yes, the Rams. A lot of people think the Rams are
that's what I
one,
thought.
but I honestly never thought of them, and maybe I was wrong. It doesn't matter.
Okay, let me try to guess. I'm from California. Are you saying there's another LA team or another California team?
LA. There's a lot of California teams.
Okay,
I'm talking about back in the 80s.
Okay, I was born in the 80s.
I know.
I was alive in the 80s.
I was going to say, hello.
So there would have been the LA Rams is all I know, or the LA Galaxy.
It's a different kind of football, soccer.
Oh, okay.
So,
I don't
they
know.
came like 20 years later. Yeah, Galaxy for the soccer, one of our soccer teams. We have two soccer teams.
But what was the football
LA
team?
Raiders.
Duh. Okay, rewind. I'm going to say it again.
So we had the LA Rams and the LA Raiders. And honestly, I was at a point in my life where I was like, I want to be a fan of something because I was in high school and I was like, I want to be a fan of something, but I don't want to be a fan of a team that's coming from another city. I want to be a fan of a team that's LA. And back then too, the Houston Oilers became the Texans. I think the Texans or something like that. I can't remember if I'm getting the right It doesn't matter. The point is they redid the franchise to make it LA. And I thought, if they do that, I'm going to be fans of that team.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't do it. So it was the Rams and the Raiders. And I was like, no, I'm out.
Okay.
And back then, too, they were playing at, one of them was playing at the Coliseum, which was not modified. I think I was the Raiders. And then the Rams were playing at Angel Stadium.
Right.
Which was really weird.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I started thinking, who do I want to be a fan of? Well, I went to a small Christian school, relatively small, 5,000 undergrads. APU is the Pacific University. And they had one football player come out of there because they're a small school. His name was Christian Okoye.
Oh, and he went
the
to play
Nigerian
for the
Nightmare, and he played for the Chiefs. And so I was planning on going to that school in a couple of years. That was my goal. And so when I found out that he was a Chief, then I was like, okay, I'm going to be a Chiefs fan. It was that easy for me. And so I started following the Chiefs back then. I won't say that I knew everything. I've never been that guy. But I tried to like follow them as much as I could and know who they were and watch them and rooted for them, etc. And then I meet my wife, which I did I talk about that on this podcast or another podcast? It was another podcast. Okay. So, but I meet my wife and she's from Kansas. She's from Kansas City.
That's
and so
funny.
it was like really cool that we lived in Kansas City. So then what's funny is I get in Kansas City and I'm like wearing Angel stuff or Dodger stuff. And they're like, why aren't you a Royals fan? And I'm like, I'm not a Royals fan.
Right,
and
right,
I'm like,
right,
and
right,
they're like, well, you're a Chiefs fan. I'm like, but dude, I'm a Chiefs fan way before I moved here. It's like
Right.
it had nothing to do
That's
with
funny.
living here. So
Interesting.
yeah, it was really funny because I really am an LA boy, but the Chiefs have been with me since the 80s.
That's
and then
so
now we got two teams again. One of them is the Rams, so I guess you can kind of say it's still LA.
Right, right.
And then I still call them the San Diego Chargers. who
Yeah,
play in
the
LA.
Chargers,
I mean, it doesn't
yeah.
make any sense
Yeah.
that they're here.
Right.
It's the silliest thing in the world.
Right.
But a matter of
That's
fact,
so
every time they
interesting.
play, when we go watch that game, because we're in the same conference, these are all very important items for the podcast. But we get to see them play, the Chiefs and the Chargers play. And it's fascinating because I would say nearly every game there are more Chiefs fans than there are Charger fans.
And there's a lot like that when we go to, not necessarily when we go to the Kings, the Red Wings versus Kings, but when we go to the Ducks.
The Ducks.
Yeah. There's so much red in the thing. And, sadly, we did not make it to the playoffs this year. We were so close. We were literally 1 point. Actually, we were tied with the last team that made it into the playoffs in terms of points. But we had one game loss. They had one more game loss or win in regulation. They had to come down. They had to come down to that. So had we had another game won in regulation.
So that means that they only won like 400 games versus 399. I'm just saying that because hockey is
They
just
play a lot.
too long.
It's not long enough. Like I'm like, oh my God, it's over. Now what are we gonna do?
Well, they play like 750,000
I know, there's a lot of
It's
games.
craziness. I don't understand it. That's one thing I do say,
That's not really how much they play, but they do play a lot.
Yeah,
like
it's 275 million. It's probably a little more. They should get paid more.
But it is sad that
Yeah.
no, because I feel like if I was a football fan, I'd be like, oh my gosh, they only play. That's it. It's over.
Well, that is my life.
Yeah.
So, but I had to take all my clothes off. I had to, not all my clothes off.
What?
I don't walk around.
What
naked.
kind of stuff?
Different kind of podcast.
Different podcast. No, I wore Chiefs stuff I wear Chiefs stuff throughout football season. And so now I put my Chiefs, except for today, I have some workout shirts.
That's a
that I
Chiefs
still-
thing.
I just said that, except for today.
Oh.
What drugs are you on? So, sorry. They
I thought
can't
you
see your
said
face.
I wear Chiefs stuff all the time, except for today.
Oh, I was saying I wear Chiefs stuff all the time through football season. And then after football season, I put my Chiefs stuff away like winter clothes. It's like winter clothes. Literally, it goes into a place.
Except for today.
Except for today.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's some workout shirts that I use, and this is really still a workout shirt, but this is when we just won in Vegas. Very important. The Super Bowl. Super Bowl is a big deal. Did you come? You came for the Super Bowl here.
I sure did.
Yeah. Didn't you have fun?
I did, but we left early.
You know what? We never did talk about. I never did finish that whole thing. So what's really fun is that because of Patrick Mahomes and because of how good he is and because of the things that he does, now my wife likes it. And then I have two guys that didn't care about football before, but they do like sports. And so my daughters, well, more accurately, the guys like. All right. Well, I guess if he's into it, I guess I'm going to be into it. Is that a fair statement, Iggy?
Yeah. I don't know if it is. I'm saying yeah for you.
I think for me it was more of I watched football, but I never had a team to follow until
Now.
no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you would have come in with a different jersey, that would have been your last invite.
So what about
not entirely, because
but
we
what
do have
about
family
Andy? Was he a football fan at all?
No.
Or he okay.
He knew nothing about football, really. He didn't watch
so
it
now
because he
he's
followed
a
soccer.
fan. Like
'Cause
he's almost I
he's a
watch him and
bigger
he's
fan
so
than me.
intense that I'm like, oh my God, I didn't.
He knows more than I do for sure. He's one of those guys that he helped me build my barbecue, and he watched like 2 YouTube videos beforehand on how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I, on the other hand, got it and started to put it together, and without looking.
Right.
Yeah, and then it was funny because it was all done, and Andy's quiet. If you know,
Of course.
Andy's pretty quiet, and it was so funny because I pushed the barbecue and I said, "All right, let's start it," and I turned it on and I did the thing, and then he goes, "Turn it off!" I was like, "Oh my God!" And because I've never heard him
That's
yell like
so
that.
funny.
And I turned it off, and then you had to because I have a pellet grill, and you had to prime it and do some stuff beforehand. Otherwise,
that's
you're
funny.
gonna fry it. It was really funny because I was like, "Oh my God, Andy's screaming! What does this mean?"
Oh my.
But now the girls love it. Trinity, it's her favorite thing to do. She can't even stop talking about it. I'm always like, Trinity, chill out. We're not even in football season right now. And she's like screaming and yelling, wearing all the clothes all the time. It's amazing.
She's just like Kylie with hockey.
Yes, exactly. They both love it. Okay, if you didn't get the sarcasm, Trinity shows up because all the family's here, but she usually puts headphones on and does other
her
things.
little thing. Yeah.
Meanwhile, everybody else is screaming their little brains out. So
I did get into Super Bowl. I'm not going to lie. I really did.
Oh, I'm really glad you're not going to lie.
Well, and the funny thing is that we had to leave early because Peter had an early morning the next.
No, he had a project that he had to finish
that night because he had to present it in the morning. So we left. And here I am. Peter's working on his project with the computer and everything, and I'm over there in front of the TV watching the rest of the game.
Well, didn't you? No,
and then I FaceTimed you.
Didn't we win while you guys were driving home?
No, I watched it and then I FaceTimed you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Someone did drive home.
You know what it was? We were not tied, and we had to tie the game at the end, right? We had to tie the game at the end, and you didn't. You left before we tied the game at the end.
Yes.
Yeah. So you didn't know that it was going into extra innings.
Well, no, but I was.
No, it's not
innings?
called extra.
I was like, I know more football than you then if you're calling it extra innings.
That was a joke. Not a very good one. All right. So it's my topic. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. So this is
Do you have drum roll on that, Indy?
We frequently dance around this subject, but we don't actually talk about this subject. And so, but it's interesting because we recently did talk about it. And so I'm wondering where this is going to go and what we're going to say that's going to be different.
This is hysterical if it's really what I think it is, because I almost talked about this last week.
What do you think it is?
No, I'm not going to tell you. I want to hear.
Okay.
I'll be honest if it is or not. Yeah.
Okay. It's good that you're honest. I'm really appreciating this. Because what does it mean?
Let me lie.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So what I want to talk about is marriage and relationships.
Oh, that's not at all what I thought you were going to say. So there you go.
What did you think it was?
I thought you were going to talk about politics.
Oh, no.
Because we have danced around it a few times.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's why
Well,
I thought
actually, politics are still something, but I don't want to talk about politics. I want to talk about how they affect us.
That's what I was thinking more of. But
we're
anyway, we're not doing that today. Yeah.
It's a really hard subject, politics, because I think it's just hard not to get into the weeds, and I don't want to get in the weeds because that's not really wholehearted living per se.
You know, that's very funny that you said that, because that's exactly why I said, not really want to bring that one up, because this is about wholehearted living.
Yeah. There you go. See?
Yeah.
Well, let's just end there. I'm kidding. Okay. Marriage and relationships.
Yeah.
So my problem with bringing this one up is not every listener is married. And so I want to talk about what makes a marriage or relation, and then really want to talk about marriage, and then we could try and figure out how this applies to other relationships, because I think nearly everything we're going to talk about in marriage could probably apply to, well, it's certainly going to apply to couples relationships, but they also, I think, can apply to friendships at a different level, right? And so what I'm really curious,
in some cases, people should treat their spouse as good as they treat a friend.
Oh,
just saying.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
So so here's the thing: is what do you say? one of the questions that I put in here, because I wanted to ask, and what the problem with this question is, I'm looking for a specific answer, and it's not like there is a right or wrong answer. So there really is not a right or wrong answer. It's just that I'm curious where you're going to go with it.
Okay.
If your husband, if Peter asks you to do something, what is the view that you take of what he's asking you to do? Do you take the view that this is something I get to do or something I have to do?
I mean, I'm going to be honest. My first thought was it kind of depends on what
She's going to be honest, everybody. Everybody, she's going to be honest.
I guess I won't say that anymore. No, but my first thought that came to mind was, well, I guess it really depends on what he's asking me to do and which way I'm going to take it. But do you know what I mean? Like, is he asking me to go to the grocery store, or is he asking me to hand him his water that's sitting next to me? I don't know, but I mean, I guess, okay. What were the two things that you
do you think when you're asked to do something, and and honestly, I have other questions that it's just meant to provoke thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's not meant to have a right or wrong answer. Do you think when you're asked to do something, and so one of the things I said is your wife, your partner, your boss, so
got it.
Do you think of it as I get to do this or I have to do this?
Mm-hmm. Well, the inkling I'm going to say is I have to do this. But what I will say is that, and we had a podcast around this not too long ago, that I have to rephrase, not me, we, I think in general, have to rephrase things like, oh, I have to go to the gym. No, I don't have to go to the gym. I get to go to the gym.
Oh, we did talk a little bit about that at one point. Right.
So in answer to your question, I think my gut response would be like, oh, if he's asking me to do something, would be, oh, I have to do that. But the way I like to look at things nowadays is I get to do that. Mm-hmm. I have the opportunity to do this for him.
Right. Well, and that's, what brought it up for me one time was I was looking at Patty was doing, I was doing work. I was doing something that to me, now, for those of you that don't know, I work at home, but I was doing, and my schoolwork, obviously I'm doing here. I'm still in school. And I was in the middle of something. And when you're in the middle of something, it's like, it's hard to get out of doing that thing, right? Well, Patty was doing something, I for whatever reason, she had really a lot of extra time, and she literally took apart our refrigerator to do that, like real cleanup instead of just the wipe down. It's like, I'm going to take the shelves off. I'm going to do all that. And I was in the middle of it. And then she says, she yells, Benny, she thought she could do it on her own. She really did. And then all of a sudden she's like, Benny, can you come help me? And, my first thought was, well, I have to, you know what I mean? I'm like frustrated a little bit, 'cause it's like, I have to stop, but it's not like one of these things where I can't do it now. Like, I'll help you in a little bit, 'cause it's the refrigerator. All the food's on the counter.
You have to put it back in. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, so I ended up helping her go back upstairs. 5 minutes later, Benny, and I'm like, oh my God, and in my head I'm thinking,
but what would she have done if you were working outside the home?
Well, and this is what's funny is that what dawned on me was I get to do this,
right?
Because I work at home.
Because you work at home.
And if I wasn't working at home, then this is not something I get to do.
Yeah.
I don't get to be helpful, be of service to, really to the family, I guess, but specifically to Patty, who's asking me to do this. So, and I just realized that I don't know. What do you think about those two concepts? The idea of I get to and I have to.
Well, I love, like again, we've talked about this, like, I have to, go to work. Well, no, I'm fortunate. I have a job. I get to go to work, that kind of stuff. I love flipping the script because it makes you go do that task wholeheartedly. It makes you open to it and feel better about it. So yeah, I mean, in answer to your question, definitely, like you said, I feel more like, oh, I have to go do XYZ. But when you tell yourself, no, I get to, because I have this opportunity to, and I can be there for them, then it makes you feel better about it, right? You're not begrudgingly doing the task.
Yeah. So now what I want to do is, so we're just talking about, so I'm applying that to every relationship, right? In one sense. And you could, you mentioned earlier, I get to go to the gym and stuff like that. You could apply that to almost everything, right? But I'm specifically thinking about how we apply it into relationships and what that means. Because, I would say most couples, when they talk about their issues, I'm guessing that most couples that are listening, if you have an issue with your partner, I would almost bet that most there's a couple. What do you think the most common complaints are in regards to relationships?
Crickets.
Crickets.
No, I think the most common complaint. I mean, honestly, I'm gonna guess that the person doesn't listen.
Okay. Keep going, yeah.
Okay, I'll keep going. There's more. No. Nagging.
Yeah. So it's
money. I don't know. Like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So money is a huge one.
Yeah.
Money, and really what it comes down to is, obviously, I mean, some people would just say lack of money, but really it has to do with how are we spending the money? How are we
exactly.
using the
How
money?
you're using it differently than I want to use it, type of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Which comes to values, right? It comes to what do I value versus what do you value? And so there's things like that. One of the other common things is, and you mentioned this in a sense, but it's communication. We don't communicate well. And so it's so funny how often people will say we don't communicate well. But really, there's like a gazillion issues in that one phrase. We don't communicate well. It's like that's what they're working on, right? So the point, though, that I wanted to get at in regards to this is, what is it in your marriage? Now, you have said more than once in the past that my marriage is good, or at least we're happy with our marriage. But what keeps you going in your marriage? I'm going to be really extreme. Why do you stay together? I mean, I'm sure there's times when you're thinking this isn't worth it, or I don't know if that's the right phrase, but I
mean, for me, I feel like I think that we do. I think for my relationship, we do have a really good communication. Like there isn't lack of communication, and when you go, I'm going to get really like dramatic about it and say, why do you stay together? Why, what, there's no other person that I want to be with. Like, I look forward to doing things with Peter, hanging out with Peter, laughing with Peter. Yeah. Sometimes his jokes are not funny, but I love that he still tries to be funny. You know what I mean? Like, they are funny. I'm just so used to his humor. You know what I mean?
Yes, but my wife would say the exact same thing. She's like, I will say a joke that I think is hilarious, and she'll literally go, "You're dumb."
Yeah. Or he'll go, "That was funny." He's like, looking at me, "That was funny." I'm like, "It really wasn't that funny." But inside I'm like, it was kind of funny. But no, I'm not going to let him know it was funny.
Yeah.
But no, I think in terms of any kind of, in terms of my relationship with him, I think that because we do communicate well, I think because we do put each other as a priority, that is why it's a good marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what, if in general, is what would you say? Because see, that's the point of the conversation that I wanted to have here. Is I think there are people out there that are probably longing to have a really good relationship. I think there are people out there, we mentioned this before, we even had a listener say something to the effect of doing something for people who have been betrayed or felt betrayed. And what do you do in those circumstances? This is getting really deep, isn't it? But how do you, or not you, but how do we keep a relationship going, keep it positive, keep it focused on the right things, and make it something that, because I know for me, go for it.
No, I was going to say, I think when you feel like you've been betrayed, you have to make a decision. I mean, you have to work through that for sure. You cannot just go, okay, well, I'm going to forget about it and move on. Like, I feel like whatever it is, you have to work through it. But I also feel like once you make the decision that, like, I'm going to stick in the marriage, I'm going to make this work because I do love this person. I do love being around this person. I want to spend the rest of my life with this person. Then you have to choose to move it. Like, you have to, it doesn't have to be necessarily forgotten, but it can't be something that you're dwelling on, and you're going to choose to move it so that you can move forward.
Right.
Because if it is one thing that you keep tossing in somebody's face, it's not moving forward. Like
Yeah.
you have to come to grips with whatever betrayal it can be. And it, you know, it could be an affair. It can be, it can be whatever. Like I've dealt with some situations in my marriage where I have felt betrayed, not in that way, but in another way. And I feel like it was my decision to just say, let's just keep moving forward. I'm
Right.
going to, it took a lot of prayer. It took some working through. And I mean, it's no, I think we've talked about it before. Peter has a temper and has learned through therapy how to manage it. But it took a lot of me,
You had a part of it to continue to move forward.
exactly.
Instead of constantly looking in the rearview mirror.
Exactly. And
Right.
you have to make that decision to move forward. Because if you're just one of those people that are just like, yeah, but remember when you did this? And I'm not saying I'm perfect. There was times that I did that. But you know, any kind of betrayal or whatever, it's like if you're in it to win it, then you got to keep moving.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, and there's a flip side of the coin to that, because I've certainly done things that hurt my family and to hurt Patty, and she had all reason in the world to say, I'm done with you. And the thing that I think is also important is for me to say, first of all, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, yeah.
I mean, obviously that goes without saying, but not just saying it, but taking action to prove that you're sorry, right? And then on top of that, though, also, whenever Patty brings it up, and she still occasionally is triggered by things, I still, even though it's best for both of us, perhaps, that she look forward, that's my responsibility is to still take.
You have to offer her grace.
I still have to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, because I think that's one thing that's interesting is that sometimes somebody will blow it. It's like, I've said sorry 4 times. I'm done.
No. And I
sorry.
agree with you 100%. I do think, and in your situation, I do think that Patty decided to move forward, obviously. But there are going to be things that like you're triggered by. And I even told Peter that because I just said, like I said a minute ago, I wasn't always perfect with it. There would be times that I would look at him and say, well, I'm having a flashback of this because of what you just said right now. And it just brought up old memories. It brought up, old recording of something that happened. And he's like, but that was a long time ago. And I go, I know, but I can't help that just came up in my mind right now. And then like you just said, he's like, well, I'm sorry that you have to go through that. I'm sorry that I put you in the place that now you have that memory,
And so there's a two-sided coin, because it doesn't do me any good, for instance, if Patty was like constantly, or maybe a better way of saying it, because when things first take place, it takes time, right?
100%.
So you're not going to just jump to, okay, let's move forward.
Well, that's why I said she has to have some kind of therapy through it too.
Right.
It's not going to be like,
process through it. But then once she's processing through it, it's like, I still have to own what I did forever. This is, that is something that I own. I'm not that person. So I don't have to I don't have to feel like crap anymore, because I'm not that person anymore.
Right.
I've changed. I'm different. I've taken.
So there's no reason to be defensive about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there is whether there is a reason or not, it's not helpful to my relationship with her. That's the key thing. So, as a matter of fact, I think it's more helpful for the other person when I take ownership of it, and then when we're able to move forward, because if I don't take ownership, then she just continues to think, you still don't get the damage that you caused or the pain.
Right.
And when I'm recognizing the pain, then all of a sudden she's able to move forward.
You're when you recognize it and again apologize for it, it's like diffusing it. Like it's not adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah. But it's a real apology. I know you agree with me, but I want to make sure for our listeners, it's a real apology. I'm not just.
You mean you're not just saying sorry to say sorry?
Yes, exactly. I'm not just saying sorry. Okay,
I'm going to shut her up. Sorry,
exactly.
sorry.
Exactly. It's like you can't do that.
No.
But the point, I guess, what I'm going for is that Patty and I would both say before a big thing, we had a great marriage. Honestly, we had a great marriage. There was a couple times where we had some tricky situations, and we sought out some therapy. It didn't even take more than a couple sessions, I think, and we were like, okay, we're fine. And then we had this big event, and then it was a rough year. But now, interestingly, we are better than we were before, which I wouldn't have imagined. I honestly would not have thought that we could have been better because we were that good. And so it's interesting to me that
I think when you guys go through things, not you guys in particular, I think when couples in general go through really, really hard times and come out of it, it brings you that much closer because you had to work at something that was somewhat easy before.
Right.
And now you're working at it, and it makes it that more valuable. It makes it that more authentic.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that there's something interesting about that whole dynamic in every relationship because even in work relationships, it's funny because, you know, in work relationships, especially nowadays, you have to be very PC. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not in corporate world, so I don't know all that
No, you do
stuff.
have to be very PC.
But you have to be really, really PC as a rule. And there's a lot of, but what's interesting to me is sometimes you have that conflict with a particular person and you, I don't know if the right words, fight your way through it, but I don't want to say fight as in you're yelling at each other and screaming and calling each other names, because that's never helpful.
Yeah.
That just requires a lot of, well, on the one side, forgiving a person, and on the other side, it requires a lot of apologies. So, but if you're able to work through an issue that's difficult and you're upset about it, you later feel closer to that person than you did before. But it requires some trust. You really have to. I always talk about, in relationships, I think when we do things for people that are positive, whether that be apologizing, whether that be taking responsibility for something, whether that be being of service, whatever it is, it's like you're putting coins in that person's pocket.
Yeah.
And so, and then when you blow it, it's like you're withdrawing. And unfortunately, when you do something good, it's like you put in a quarter.
And then
when
you
blow
take
it,
out
you
50
take out
cents.
$1.
Yeah.
It doesn't work exactly one-on-one.
It's like that 2 steps forward, 4 steps back kind of thing. Like
exactly. And what's interesting though is this: as long as the person's pockets are full, your relationship is going to be good. And what happens is once those pockets are empty, then this is when we're working at a deficit. And that's when a lot of people are really hurting and struggling because both people are in a deficit. Both people feel like this isn't working. There's something wrong. And something either needs to happen where the relationship's not going to work because somebody's just not invested in it and they do not want to fill your pockets. They just are done. Or both people have to start to go, I'm going to take a risk to fill his or her pockets before they fill up mine.
And I used to, when I first got married, you hear people say, marriage is a 50-50 relationship, and it's not. It's 100-100. Like you cannot put in 50 and expect the other person to put in 50, and for it to be, a full marriage. Like you have to be putting in 100%, and that to me that means what you just said. Like you have to be willing to fill the other person's pocket, even if they're not completely filling yours at the moment. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that, but I think that's true of all relationships.
For sure.
Because otherwise what we're doing is we're what's that called? We're taking score. So it's like, well,
I'll do for
I
you
did
when
this,
you do
I
for
did
me.
this,
Yeah.
I did this. And so where's mine?
Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't work like
Exactly.
that. No relationship
Yeah.
works like that.
Yeah.
If that's the way you're thinking about the relationship, any relationship, I did this and I get this. It's very transactional and you're never going to go anywhere.
Right.
Because ultimately you're going to end up feeling empty because you will, especially if you're trying to be a good person and doing a lot of stuff. I hear this all the time in relationships, not anecdotally. I mean, not necessarily like in therapy or anything, but I hear people talking like, well, gosh, I'm always the one that's reaching out. And I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm always the one that's reaching out. I don't know why. I don't know why I keep on doing it. And I'm just like thinking, well, you have an option to say, I love the fact that I get to be with this person, and it's not their way of doing this, of reaching out to me, or saying, screw him, I'm going to go find somebody else. This one's never filling my pocket. But it's like, but the point is that you to just argue with yourself and then expect the other person to change, or try and change a person who's not going to change. That's not our job, is to make the other person change. It's their job to change. And it doesn't work.
Don't you feel like in some ways when you're filling somebody else's pocket, no matter what relationship it is that you're in, whether it's with your spouse or your child or a friend, coworker, don't you feel like when you're filling somebody else's pocket that you're kind of also filling your own?
For sure.
Yeah.
You mean that's like the principle of generosity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No, I love the fact that you're saying this because I even think about this is getting off the subject a hair, but well, not a hair, a whole lot, but but I was going to say
a whole wig.
But a really wealthy people. It's really interesting. These really wealthy people who all of a sudden realize, I can't take this money to the grave, and this money really isn't that great for my kids, like, because it's going to ruin them, because they're not going to understand what it means.
The value of a dollar.
Of the money of it, and what work does for you, and the idea of making an impact on people and lives. And so what's funny is a lot of these people turn to philanthropy and giving away their money like a big time.
Right.
And almost all of them will say, I like doing this more than I like making the money. And that's like really an interesting thing, because most people, that's not how they started out. It's like they start out thinking, I want the biggest company.
Sure.
I don't know that they want to be the richest person in the world, but they want to make an impact on society, kind of a thing. And so I'm always fascinated by that. But I think it's true in relationships, same thing. When we give, we definitely get something back. And we're not talking, obviously, about, there could be abuse, there could be trauma, there could be a lot of different things. And those are, different areas where probably need therapy and different.
Yeah. I mean, I think I got your point. Like, I get what you're saying just in general. Like, if you're just afloat in a relationship, like what you can do to keep pushing it forward.
Yeah, because our podcast is Wholehearted Living. I don't think you can have a wholehearted life if you're not connected to other people. It's just not possible. If you're not, now that doesn't mean you have to be married though, nor does it mean that you have to have a significant other, but it does mean you need to be in a relationship. If you're not in relationship with other people, and you're alone, and it doesn't have to be a huge circle of people.
No, not at all. I think this was one of Brene Brown's, or one of her guideposts that we did.
Exactly.
That was,
But you need to be in relationship with people, and one of the ways you do that is by investing in it, by risking it, quite frankly, and saying, I'm going to go for this, even though it might cost me a little bit. And then if it's not working, then we move to a different place, if that makes sense. So. Well, that went longer than I thought. See, that wasn't bad, was it?
No. It wasn't scary.
Yeah, we went a totally different direction.
It wasn't scary at all.
Yeah, except for the couple times when I asked you a question, you looked at the mic like, is this mic black?
Well,
like,
when you said there's not really a wrong or right answer, but there really is a right answer. I'm like,
yeah, well, I didn't mean to say right answer. I meant to say I was looking for an answer, which would not be your fault. You're right. Sorry. Okay. Well, Iggy, thanks you.
Thanks you all.
Thank you for keeping us in sound, keeping us going. Yes, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. What's going on?
Thank you for following us
at Wholehearted Living Podcast. That is our Instagram post. We would like our Instagram.
Wholehearted Living Podcast.
Yeah, what's it called? Is that page? Okay, name. Whatever.
Instagram.
Handle. There it is. See, you didn't even know what it was, did you?
I did. I just didn't know that's what you were trying to say. I feel like sometimes we just don't know how to start the podcast, and sometimes we don't know how to end it.
That's true.
I think we're just so...
Iggy, from now on, just hit mute at one point. At one point where everything seems like it's going good, just go, okay, done.
Anyway, thank you for joining us, you guys.
Yeah, we're really glad you're with us. And like we did say, please subscribe, like, etc. on Spotify as well as YouTube, and click like for the Wholehearted Living Podcast.
Yeah, go find us on Instagram and like it and...
Yeah,
and
share it. Yeah, we'd love for that to happen. So thank you so much for listening.
See you next week. Bye.
Ciao.